He looked me in the eyes and said, "You don't need that kind of money at your age." That was my retirement fund, every dollar earned from 60-hour weeks, cold winters spent on roofs, and summers pouring concrete till my hands bled. Gone, just like that. My son-in-law drained my account without shame. And my daughter? She stood by him, arms crossed, not saying a word. Not even looking at me. I wasn't just robbed. I was erased. They thought I was too old to fight back. That I'd roll over quietly. But they forgot who built everything they're standing on. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. People always say you forget the hard days and remember the sweet ones. But I remember them all. I remember waking up before dawn to fire up the old pickup, thermos full of black coffee, back aching before the day even started. I worked construction for over 4 decades, framing, roofing, plumbing, you name it. Built homes with my hands, one nail and one beam at a time. Not glamorous, but it fed us. It gave my daughter everything I never had. Emily was born when I was already pushing 40. Marjorie and I didn't think we could have children, too many years trying. But she came into the world screaming like a thunderstorm, and just like that, I had a new reason to live. Marjorie was the soft one, the heart. I was the firm one, rules, chores, discipline. But I wasn't unkind. I just wanted Emily to grow strong, to know the value of work and the dignity of doing right by others. And she did. At least for a long time. Those early years were golden. I still remember the smell of Marjorie's blueberry muffins on Saturday mornings, Emily running barefoot across the wooden floors, curls bouncing. I built her a swing set from leftover lumber. Spent a whole weekend sanding it smooth and painting it bright blue. She squealed so loud the first time she swung on it, the neighbors thought something was wrong. After Marjorie passed, sudden stroke, middle of the night, it was just me and Emily. That was the worst year of my life. I didn't cry in front of Emily. I couldn't. I had to be the strong one, the one who kept dinner on the table and the lights on. She was 13 when Marjorie died. Too young to lose her mother, too old to not understand. She changed after that, got quieter, started writing in notebooks all the time, listening to music in her room for hours. But I stayed close. I made time. I drove her to school every morning, packed her lunch even when she said I didn't have to. When she turned 16, I taught her how to drive in the same truck I'd used to haul tools for decades. She stalled it 3 times in a row, then threw her arms up and said, "I'll just ride my bike forever." But the next day, she got it. That was Emily, stubborn, but sharp. I watched her grow into a thoughtful, determined woman. She got a scholarship to a local college, majored in education. I was proud of her. She used to call me after her evening classes and tell me about the kids she was tutoring. She loved helping people learn. Every dollar I saved went into her future. I never went on vacation. Never bought a new car. My pension wasn't huge, but I put money away steadily, CDs, savings bonds, even a little in the market when I could afford the risk. I always told her, "It's not much, but it's yours someday. Just promise me you'll use it wisely." She always smiled and said, "Of course, Dad." Back then, I believed her. We had a rhythm. She'd come over every Sunday for dinner, even after she moved into her own apartment. I'd cook meatloaf or pork chops, and we'd sit out on the porch with sweet tea, watching the sun go down over the trees Marjorie planted out front. Those trees are still there, tall, strong, like she was. Then, one Sunday, she brought Marcus with her. He was polite enough at first. Firm handshake, flashy smile. Said he was in real estate acquisitions, whatever that meant. He talked fast, bragged about closing deals, dropping numbers I had no way to verify. Wore expensive shoes, too, not the kind that scuff on job sites. But Emily was happy. Her eyes lit up when he talked. So I smiled and nodded and handed him a plate like it didn't bother me that he didn't once ask how I was doing. They got married a year later in a courthouse ceremony. I offered to pay for a wedding. Emily declined. Said they were keeping it low-key. That was the first sign I ignored. I told myself it was fine, they were young, independent. Maybe that was a good thing. I wanted her to have a strong marriage, to build a life. That's what I worked for. That's why I never bought myself a boat, or replaced the cracked kitchen tiles, or took that trip to see the Grand Canyon like Marjorie always wanted. It was all for Emily. Always Emily. When they moved into their first home, I gave them $25,000 for the down payment. No questions asked. I wanted to help. Marcus didn't even say thank you. He just grinned and said, "This'll help keep the interest down." Emily kissed my cheek and whispered, "You're the best." For a while, things stayed warm. They came for dinners, brought me little gifts. Marcus once bought me a fancy electric drill set for my birthday. I used it once. Never felt right in my hand. Then they started visiting less. Marcus began calling me old man in a way that didn't sound playful. Emily laughed when he did. I laughed too, but it stung more than I let on. I figured life was just moving fast for them, work, responsibilities. I kept myself busy. Built birdhouses, fixed the fence. Started volunteering twice a week at the Veterans Center. Told myself not to expect too much. But somewhere along the way, the warmth turned to cool politeness. My calls went to voicemail more often. My texts got shorter replies. And every time Marcus came around, he asked more questions about my finances. I still remember the last thing Marjorie ever said to me, right before she went to bed that night. "Promise me you'll always look out for Emily. Even when it's hard." I promised. And I meant it. I just didn't know how hard it would really get. It started small. One day, Marcus stopped calling me Dad. He'd said it a few times early on, usually when he wanted something. "Hey Dad, could you co-sign this?" Or, "Dad, you know anyone selling land cheap?" But then it disappeared, and suddenly I was just George. No warmth, no familiarity. Just my name, flat and cold, like I was a stranger who happened to be sitting at his table. Emily noticed. I saw it in the way her eyes flicked between us during dinner, how she forced a smile when I tried to make conversation. But she never said anything. And neither did I. I didn't want to seem paranoid. I've always been the kind of man who keeps peace where he can. I've seen families fall apart over things that could have been solved with a little patience. So I held back. Then came the comments, quick little jabs, always with a laugh to soften the blow. "You're still driving that old truck. We gotta get you into something safe before it falls apart. Maybe it's time you sold that house, George. Too much space for one person. You ever think about moving into one of those retirement communities? Some of them are real nice these days." Always with that same slick tone. Like he was trying to convince me he was doing me a favor. Like I hadn't built that house with my bare hands. Like I didn't still fix the pipes and mow the yard myself. Emily never corrected him. Sometimes she even joined in. "He's just teasing," she'd say, brushing his arm, laughing. But her laugh wasn't the same anymore. It sounded rehearsed, like something she put on for show. One evening, they came by with takeout. Emily set the food on the counter while Marcus wandered through the house, hands in his pockets, nodding like he was appraising the place. I followed him, just to see where his mind was going. "You know," he said, looking around the living room, "this space could fetch a good price on the market. People love original hardwood." I stared at him. "I'm not selling." He grinned. "Just saying. Never know when that day might come." It wasn't what he said. It was the way he said it, like the decision wasn't really mine to make. Like the house was already halfway out of my hands. After they left that night, I sat in Marjorie's old armchair and just stared at the doorway for a long time. The air felt different. He'd walked through the place like he owned it. Like he was waiting for me to die. A week later, I got a call from the bank. Nothing serious, just a routine security confirmation. They said someone had tried to access my account from a different IP address. When I asked where from, they said the city center, the exact area where Marcus's office was. I froze. I hadn't logged in from anywhere but home in years. I changed my passwords, added two-factor authentication, the whole 9 yards. But my stomach was in knots for days. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think Emily could be part of something like that. So I didn't ask. Instead, I started watching more closely. They came over less and less. When they did, Marcus spent more time on his phone than talking to me. Emily seemed tired, distracted. I tried asking if everything was all right. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. One afternoon, I stopped by their house unannounced, just wanted to bring over some leftover chili and see my daughter. I knocked, waited, then let myself in with the spare key they'd given me years ago. The place was clean, quiet. Too quiet. I called out, "Emily?" No answer. But I heard voices, low, muffled, coming from the office down the hall. I followed them. The door was cracked open just enough to hear Marcus's voice. He was talking on speakerphone to someone, pacing back and forth. No, the old man hasn't noticed anything. His memory's not what it used to be. Emily's keeping him calm. I stood frozen. Then Emily's voice, "I'm trying, but he's not stupid. He watches everything." Marcus laughed. "He won't know what hit him. We just need a few more weeks. Once the last transfer clears, we can move forward." I stepped back, heart pounding. They were talking about me. I left the chili on the porch and drove home without saying a word. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat up in bed with the old photo albums, Emily at 5 with cake on her face, Emily in her prom dress, Emily standing beside me at Marjorie's grave. I looked at those pictures and wondered how we got here. What I missed. What I ignored. The next morning, I called my lawyer, the same man who helped me settle Marjorie's will. Told him I needed to set an appointment. Something about asset protection. He said, "Everything all right, George?" I paused. "No. But I think I'm finally seeing things clearly." It happened on a Sunday. They invited me over for brunch, said they wanted to talk about the future. That should have been a red flag, but part of me still wanted to believe the best. Maybe Emily had come to her senses. Maybe she was going to apologize, tell me I misunderstood. I wore my good jacket. The one Marjorie gave me for our 30th anniversary. I combed my hair, shaved, even picked a small bouquet of daisies from the garden, Emily's favorite as a girl. I stood at their door with hope in my hands and knots in my stomach. Emily opened the door, eyes red like she'd been crying. Marcus stood behind her, arms folded. No smiles. No greetings. I stepped in. The dining table was set, fancy dishes, fresh orange juice, pancakes, even those little sausages Emily used to beg for as a kid. She barely touched hers. Marcus sat at the head of the table like a CEO, tapping his fingers, waiting for me to finish chewing before he spoke. "So, George," he said. "We've been thinking." Those 3 words, always the beginning of something terrible. "We're worried about you. The house. Your memory. Your finances. It's a lot for one person." Emily glanced down. I looked at her, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. Marcus continued, "We talked to a lawyer. Just a consultation. Nothing binding. But there are things we could do to make things easier on you. Give you peace of mind. He pulled out a stack of papers from a folder beside him. Neatly clipped. Professionally printed. Power of attorney, he said casually, sliding the papers across the table like it was a takeout menu. It just lets us help manage your accounts. Pay bills. Handle things if something unexpected happens. I didn't touch the papers. Why would something unexpected happen? I asked. Marcus gave that practiced half-smile. Well, you're getting older, George. It's not a bad thing. It's just responsible planning. Emily finally looked up. Her lip trembled. It's not about control, Dad. It's just to help. We worry about you. I picked up the top page. My name, printed in bold. And below it, their names, designated as agents, authorized to act on my behalf. It was all laid out, clean and legal. But I could see it clearly, this wasn't about help. This was about taking everything before I even hit the grave. I set the papers down. I'm not signing this, I said, my voice steady. Marcus blinked, as if surprised I still had a backbone. Why not? He asked, tone still calm. You trust us, don't you? I looked at Emily. Her eyes begged me silently, not for forgiveness, not for understanding. For compliance. Do you even know what's in that document? I asked her. She opened her mouth, then closed it. That was my answer. I pushed my chair back, slow and deliberate. My knees ached, but I stood tall. I built that house. I paid every bill. I never missed a mortgage, never asked anyone for a damn cent. And now you want me to hand it over like I'm some burden? Like I don't know what's happening? Marcus stood too, voice sharper now. No one's taking anything from you, George. You're being paranoid. Then why the power of attorney? He shrugged. It's protection. For all of us. For you, you mean? Emily finally spoke, soft and shaking. Dad, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I felt it then, not anger, not even betrayal. Just something hollow. A kind of grief I didn't know existed. Like someone took the best parts of my life and quietly set them on fire. I left without another word. As I walked out, I noticed something that hadn't registered before, the set of my tools in their garage. My late father's level, the old chisel I'd used for decades, my soldering kit. I'd lent them some of it last year when Marcus said he was going to do some renovations. I never got them back. I drove home slowly, hands trembling. Sat in my truck for 10 minutes before I could bring myself to go inside. When I did, I went straight to my file cabinet. Bank statements. Property deeds. Marjorie's will. Everything I'd saved. Then I looked at the pictures on the wall. Emily in her graduation gown. Emily holding her first paycheck. Emily sitting beside Marjorie, cheeks puffed with whipped cream, laughing like the world was perfect. Where did she go? What did I do so wrong? I didn't sleep that night. Just paced the hallway, listening to the creaks in the floorboards I once laid by hand. Every sound reminded me this was still my home, the only place in the world that felt like mine. And now, they wanted to take even that. The next morning, I got a call from church. Apparently, Emily and Marcus had asked to be added to the prayer list, for the burden of caring for an aging parent. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. That Sunday, I didn't go to church. I didn't go anywhere. I just sat at the kitchen table with a pen in my hand and started making a list, not of groceries or errands. A list of what was mine. And what I was about to take back. The worst kind of betrayal isn't loud. It's quiet. It creeps in through the cracks, where trust used to live. It was 2 weeks after that brunch when I found out the full extent of what they were doing behind my back. It started with a letter, not a call, not an email, but a thick envelope from my bank marked urgent account notification. I sat at the table, slit it open with my old pocketknife, and unfolded the first page. 3 unauthorized wire transfers. 2 to a company name I didn't recognize, Oakwell Holdings. 1 directly to Marcus. I called the bank immediately. The woman on the line was kind, but her voice tightened when I gave my name. She asked for verification. I gave it. Then she said, "Mr. Chambers, we already spoke with your representative about this. Your power of attorney is on file." My heart dropped. "I never signed a power of attorney," I said. She paused. "I see. In that case, we'll need to escalate this. Can you come in today?" I drove straight there. They showed me the document. It had my signature. Looked just like mine. But I didn't sign it. Someone forged it. And not just that, they'd used my social security number, my address, everything. The withdrawals had been spaced out over months. Slowly. Just under the limit where the bank is required to alert me directly. I sat there, blinking at the paper in front of me. It felt like the ground under me had shifted. Like I was falling, but my body hadn't caught up yet. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" the banker asked, gently. I nodded. "Once. Marcus." I didn't say it aloud. I didn't need to. They flagged the account, started a fraud report, locked the remaining funds. But most of it was already gone. Almost $200,000. My life savings. Gone. I drove home without turning the radio on. Every mile felt heavier than the last. When I got inside, I walked straight to the living room and pulled out the photo album again. Not to look at Emily this time. I looked for Marjorie. Her smile. Her eyes. I needed to feel her close. Because I knew what was coming next, and I needed strength. I remembered her sitting in that kitchen chair, legs tucked under her, sipping coffee from the chipped mug she refused to replace. I remembered her hand on mine the day we finished paying off the mortgage. "This house is ours now," she said, beaming. "For us. And for Emily." If only she could see what they were doing to it now. That night, I called my old friend Walter. He was a retired notary and had helped me with paperwork years ago when I refinanced the house. "Walt," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You ever heard of Oakwell Holdings?" He didn't answer right away. "Then, that's one of those shell companies, George. They buy assets under different names, move money around. Not always illegal, but shady." My throat tightened. "Marcus funneled money through them," I said quietly. Walt didn't sound surprised. "You ready to make this official?" he asked. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "I'm ready." The next morning, I sat down with a pen and paper and made notes, dates, conversations, documents, every strange thing I'd ignored for the last year. The small comments. The way Emily kept checking her phone during dinner. The missing tools. The forged signature. I wasn't just dealing with greed. This was premeditated. I drove to my lawyer's office the next day. George Halberd, good man, meticulous, patient. He'd handled Marjorie's estate with such care I knew I could trust him with this. I laid it all out on his desk. Every bank statement, every note, every detail. He didn't interrupt once. Just listened. When I was finished, he leaned back in his chair, folded his hands, and said, "You've got a case. A strong one. But George, this will get ugly." I looked him straight in the eye. "It's already ugly. I'm just done pretending it isn't." He nodded. We filed the first set of fraud reports that afternoon. After I left his office, I didn't drive straight home. I parked near the lake, the one Marjorie used to love, and sat on the old bench facing the water. The wind was crisp, the sun just beginning to sink below the trees. I closed my eyes and let myself feel it. The betrayal. The heartbreak. The shame. Because yes, there was shame too. I raised her. I taught her right from wrong. I gave her everything I had. And somehow, I still ended up here, used and discarded by the one person I swore to protect. But I didn't stay there. I opened my eyes, pulled out my notebook, and wrote something simple on the last page. They think I'm weak. Let them. That's how this ends. Speech balloon. Have you ever felt betrayed by your own family? Let us know in the comments. I waited until I was calm. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to cry. I didn't even want revenge, not yet, anyway. I just wanted the truth. I wanted to see if my daughter could look me in the eyes and admit what she'd done. I called Emily the next morning. She answered on the second ring, chipper like nothing had happened. "Hi, Dad." That voice used to bring me peace. Now it made my stomach turn. "I need to talk to you," I said. She hesitated. "About what?" "In person. Your place. Today." I heard Marcus in the background asking who it was. She muffled the phone, whispered something, and came back with a clipped, "Okay." "Around 5?" "5, I said, and hung up. At 4:45, I was already parked down the street. I watched their front door for a while, saw Marcus leave in his sleek black car, off to whatever scheme he was cooking up next. When I knocked, Emily opened the door with a nervous smile. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. I walked past her, straight to the living room, and sat down on the couch. She followed, sitting on the edge of the armchair like she was bracing for impact. "I know about the money," I said. Her eyes widened. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. "I know about the forged signature. The fake power of attorney. Oakwell Holdings. All of it." Her face drained of color. "Dad, Don't lie to me." She looked down, breathing fast. "Marcus said you'd never notice. That you weren't even using the money. He said it was just sitting there." "That money was my future," I said, voice shaking. "That money was for emergencies. For when my body finally gives out. For when I need care. For peace." "I didn't think it would go this far," she whispered. I leaned forward. "You let him take it. You stood by while he robbed me. You looked me in the eye and let me believe we were still a family." Tears welled up in her eyes. "He said we'd pay it back." "When?" She didn't answer. I stood up. "You may have taken my savings, but you won't take my dignity. And you won't take my home." She opened her mouth to say something, but I was already at the door. "Tell Marcus something for me," I said without turning around. "I built my life with bare hands and blistered palms. He'll learn the hard way what it means to steal from a man like that." I left her there, crying into her hands. That night, I started making phone calls. Quiet ones. Neighbors. Old friends. Guys I hadn't talked to in years. I didn't tell them everything, just enough. Some had heard rumors already. Apparently Marcus had a reputation around town: fast money, fast talk, shallow roots. A few of them said things like, "You always struck me as too sharp to let that guy get close." I wanted to believe that too. One neighbor, an older fellow named Tom who'd once worked with me on a city hall renovation, said something that stuck. "Funny thing about snakes," he said. "They always shed skin, but they don't change." He offered to put me in touch with a friend who used to be a private investigator. "Not the kind on TV," Tom chuckled, but he knows how to dig where it matters. A week later, that PI handed me a folder. It was thicker than I expected. Inside, Marcus's real business history. Failed ventures. Loans under fake names. He'd done this before, taken money from older relatives, manipulated paperwork, then vanished when things got tight. But this time, he thought he'd landed a gold mine. He thought I'd roll over. The next piece came from Walt, my notary friend. He'd quietly verified that Marcus had filed paperwork at the county office to begin a probate planning process, typically used when someone expects to take over a relative's estate soon. He had begun the legal steps to take ownership of my property. Before I was even dead. That was it. That was my line. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was tired. Tired of being quiet. Tired of watching my daughter shrink into someone I didn't recognize. Tired of being treated like a burden. I went to my safe and pulled out the envelope where I kept my original deed, the copy of Marjorie's will, and the letters she'd written to Emily before she passed. I held them all in my lap and stared at them for a long time. Then I called my lawyer. "George," he said, "I've been thinking. There's a way to protect everything, ironclad. But it won't leave them with much." "Good," I said. "I don't want them to have a damn thing." We set the appointment for the following Tuesday. I hung up and sat on the porch until the sun dipped low. Something in me had changed. Not anger. Clarity. They'd tried to take everything I built. Now, I was going to take back what was mine, and make sure they couldn't touch a single nail of it ever again. The air inside Halberd and Associates was cold, sterile, the kind of quiet that hangs between the walls of places where life-changing decisions get made. I sat in a leather chair across from George Halberd, the same man who'd helped me draft the will when Marjorie passed, when I still believed my daughter would carry the family legacy with honor. Now, I was rewriting everything. He looked over his glasses, hands folded. "You're sure, George? This isn't something you walk back easily?" I nodded. "I've never been more sure." He opened a fresh file, clicked his pen, and we began. We went through everything, line by line. The house. The land. My truck. The remaining savings, what little was left. I listed each item, watching George scribble with neat precision. "And the beneficiaries?" he asked. I looked out the window for a long moment. The city moved outside, oblivious. People going about their lives, making choices they'd have to live with. "None of it goes to Emily or Marcus," I said. "Understood. I want everything placed into a living trust. After I pass, it becomes a scholarship fund for trade students. Vocational kids. Plumbers, electricians, carpenters, people who work with their hands." George raised an eyebrow. A generous gesture. "It's what Marjorie would have wanted," I said. "She always said education should be useful." We kept going. I asked him to draft a clause, airtight, stating that any contest to the will would result in everything being donated to charity. No appeals. No disputes. You challenge the will, you lose everything. It wasn't bitterness. It was protection. Emily and Marcus had already proven they'd twist anything to serve themselves. I wasn't going to leave the door open a second time. George finished writing, then slid the papers over. I stared at them for a few seconds. My name at the top. A life's worth of work spelled out in ink. Then I signed. When the pen left the page, a strange feeling washed over me. Not relief. Not satisfaction. Just peace. Not because I was healed. Not because everything was okay. But because, for the first time in months, I had taken back control. Afterward, George notarized the documents and locked them away. He handed me a certified copy and said, "If they try anything, we'll be ready." I nodded. "Thank you, I said quietly. Driving home, I passed by the church where Marjorie and I were married. The doors were open, probably prepping for Sunday services. I pulled over without thinking, walked inside, and sat in the last pew. The place hadn't changed much. Same worn hymnals, same dusty sunlight pouring through the stained glass windows. I sat there a long while, not praying exactly. Just remembering. I thought about that first time Marjorie and I stood here, hands shaking, both broke but full of dreams. I thought about the time Emily sang in the Christmas pageant, off-key and beaming with pride. I thought about what it meant to truly let go of someone, not because you stopped loving them, but because they stopped loving you the way they used to. When I got home, I placed the will copy in my safe, beneath Marjorie's letters and next to a photograph of her holding baby Emily in the garden. That night, I didn't sleep much. I walked the house, touching the walls I'd painted, the floors I'd laid down. I passed by the dent in the baseboard Emily made when she tripped playing tag. The notch in the hallway from when Marjorie dropped a skillet and laughed so hard she nearly cried. This wasn't just a house. It was a story. And now, it would become someone else's shelter, someone who earned it, someone who needed it. The next morning, I got a text from Emily. "Can we talk? Just us. Please." I stared at it for a long time. Then I turned off the phone. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, I went out to the garden. Pulled weeds. Trimmed the hedges. Marjorie used to hum while doing this, a little tune from the radio. I hummed it, badly, but it made me smile. That same afternoon, I got a visit from the private investigator. He dropped off copies of the final report. Marcus's dealings. His shell companies. Even a few discreet interviews with people he'd swindled before. I read through it carefully, then placed it in a folder labeled Evidence and locked it away. One thing I'd learned in all this: documentation matters. Truth matters. Especially when people try to bend reality to their benefit. Before he left, the investigator turned to me and said, "I've worked with a lot of families. This kind of betrayal, it sticks." I nodded. Yeah. But so does clarity. That night, I poured myself a small glass of bourbon. Sat on the porch. Watched the stars. Somewhere deep inside, a door had closed. Quietly. Without a slam. The kind of closure that doesn't come with fireworks. Just the sound of your own breathing, steady and calm, because you finally stopped hoping broken people will fix themselves. I raised the glass to the stars and whispered, "We're okay now, Marjorie. I've done what needed doing." She didn't answer, of course. But the breeze picked up just then. And it felt like enough. It came in the mail. A plain white envelope, no return address. Just my name, printed neatly in the center. I opened it slowly, already bracing myself. Inside was a formal letter from the county recorder's office. Marcus had filed a petition for conservatorship. In simple terms, he was trying to have me declared mentally unfit. To take legal control of my finances, my property, my decisions. It was the final move. The checkmate he thought I wouldn't see coming. The breath left my body. I sat down, reread the letter, then reread it again. My hands didn't shake this time. Maybe because I wasn't surprised anymore. Maybe because, deep down, I knew this was always where it was heading. What kind of man files paperwork to declare his wife's father incompetent, just to snatch what little peace that man has left? I stared at the walls of my home, the same home I'd built with Marjorie, nail by nail. Every corner carried our memories. Every scuff mark had a story. And now he wanted to claim it. He wanted to bury me before I was even gone. That was the moment something hardened in me. Not anger, that had long since cooled. This was something deeper. Like steel under pressure. I got up, went to the safe, and pulled out the folder marked Evidence. Then I made a new one. Inside it, I placed a copy of the new will, the PI's report, bank statements showing the forged transactions, photocopies of the false power of attorney, a letter I'd written by hand the night before, addressed to Emily, but not yet sent. I packed it all neatly in a black leather briefcase. One Marjorie had bought me back in '85 when I was promoted to foreman. It had been gathering dust in the closet. Not anymore. I knew exactly what I was going to do. And when. Marcus's birthday was the following weekend. I'd been invited, of course, though I hadn't responded. It was being hosted at my own house. Yes. You heard that right. Apparently, they had planned a surprise party, at my house. Emily had sent a text weeks ago asking if she could borrow the space for a few hours, because theirs was too cramped. She said it would mean a lot to Marcus. I never said yes. But they took silence as permission. The audacity of it all still stuns me. Saturday came, and I stayed gone on purpose that morning. Drove to the lake. Fed ducks. Cleared my head. I knew what was waiting when I came back. At 4 o'clock sharp, I pulled up the driveway. Their cars were already lined along the curb. Balloons tied to the porch railing. Laughter spilling out from the open front door. I walked in. The music stopped. A few heads turned. Some looked confused. Some looked guilty. Marcus stood in the center of the room, drink in hand, smiling like a man who thought he'd already won the war. Well, he said. Didn't think you'd show. I stepped forward, holding the briefcase. I'm here for what's mine, I said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. Emily appeared from the kitchen, face pale. Dad, please, not here. I ignored her. I walked to the center of the room, set the briefcase on the coffee table, and opened it. I know what you've done, I said to Marcus. And so will everyone else in this room. I pulled out the documents one by one. The forged power of attorney, I said, holding it up. The bank records showing the missing money. The false conservatorship filing, trying to declare me mentally incompetent. People shifted uncomfortably. One of Marcus's friends whispered something and left. I kept going. This, I said, holding up the PI's report, is your business history. Fraud. Shell companies. Manipulated documents. It's a pattern, Marcus. And you picked the wrong man this time. He tried to laugh. You've lost it, old man. No one here believes any of that. Emily stepped forward, eyes filled with something that looked like panic. But I wasn't looking for belief. I pulled out one final page, the notarized clause in my will. If anyone named in this document contests its contents, I read aloud, the entire estate, house, savings, possessions, will be donated to charity. No exceptions. I closed the briefcase. I've protected everything I built. You will not get a single nail, not a single dime, not even a chair from this house. The room was silent. I looked at Emily, voice low. I asked you once to stand up for what's right. You didn't. I won't ask again. I turned and walked out without another word. I didn't need applause. I didn't want drama. I wanted peace. And for the first time in months, I felt it return. The whispers started before I got home. Word travels fast in a small town, faster when the truth is finally louder than the lies. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my phone had buzzed 5 times. Missed calls. Texts. Mostly from numbers I didn't recognize. One message just said, "Good for you, Mr. Chambers." About time. I stepped into the house and locked the door behind me. My house. Still standing. Still mine. The silence afterward was almost too much. No footsteps upstairs. No voices in the kitchen. Just me, the ticking of the wall clock, and the briefcase still sitting on the coffee table like a war trophy. I made tea. Not because I needed it, but because Marjorie used to say, a cup of tea makes the truth sit easier. I sat on the porch, the evening breeze brushing against my face, and just breathed. A few hours passed before the first knock came. It wasn't Marcus. It was Emily. She looked small. Not like a grown woman, more like a girl trying to fit into adult clothes. Her makeup was gone. Her shoulders were hunched. No jewelry. No smile. I opened the door but didn't step aside. She didn't ask to come in. "Dad," she started, voice already breaking. "What you said today." I waited. She swallowed hard. "It's all true, isn't it?" I didn't answer. She nodded like she expected the silence. "Marcus told me it was just temporary. That we'd pay it back. That you wouldn't even notice." I still didn't speak. Because this wasn't about words. Not anymore. She looked down, twisting the hem of her shirt in her fingers like she used to do when she was nervous as a child. I knew it was wrong. But I didn't know how to stop it. I let him convince me that, you'd forgive us. That caught me. I looked her in the eyes. "Emily," I said softly. "Forgiveness doesn't erase consequences." Her lip quivered. "I don't know who I became," she whispered. "You raised me better than this." "I did," I said, not unkindly. "But you chose differently." She nodded, tears streaming now. She didn't try to wipe them away. "He's gone," she said. "Left after your speech. Packed a bag and took off. Said I ruined everything." I breathed in. Exhaled slowly. "You still living in that house?" I asked. She nodded. "Then it's yours to keep," I said. "But you won't be getting anything else." Her eyes flickered. Not with anger. With shame. "I understand," she whispered. We stood there for a moment, the space between us thick with everything unsaid. The birthdays missed. The Sunday dinners that stopped. The trust shattered and still falling. Finally, she said, "Can I come by sometime? Just to visit? No talk of money. Just, to see you?" I looked past her, at the porch railing I'd rebuilt last year, at the hydrangeas blooming below the window. "I don't know," I said. "I need time." She nodded. "Okay." Then she turned and walked away, slowly, quietly. Like she didn't want to wake something that had finally gone to sleep. I closed the door behind her. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in months. Not because everything was fixed. But because I had finally drawn the line. Speech balloon brain, do you think the father made the right choice? Comment and don't forget to like and subscribe for more true life stories. The house was quiet. Not the uneasy kind of quiet that clings after a fight, but the kind that settles deep in your bones. The kind that says, you've done what you needed to do. Now rest. For the first time in what felt like years, I had no calls to make, no papers to sign, no threats looming over my shoulder. Just silence. The town buzzed, of course. People talk, they always do. Word had spread about the birthday party incident, as someone called it down at the hardware store. Some folks said I embarrassed the family. Others said it was about time someone put Marcus in his place. I didn't care either way. I wasn't looking for applause. I just wanted peace. I kept to myself those first few days. Walked the property every morning. The grass was longer than I liked, so I trimmed it. Fixed the back gate while I was at it. Repainted the porch swing, even though no one had sat on it in months. It felt good to work with my hands again. Purposeful. Like I was still here, still useful. I found myself talking to Marjorie more than usual. Her picture stayed on the fireplace mantel, just like always. Some mornings I'd pour 2 cups of coffee out of habit and catch myself halfway to the table. I handled it, Marge, I'd say out loud. Took me long enough, but I did. In the afternoons, I walked the trail behind the house that led to the little creek where Emily used to collect pebbles. The water still trickled quietly, the same way it always had. I sat on the same flat rock we used to use for picnics and listened. Funny how the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. Then, a few days later, I got a knock at the door. It wasn't Emily. Wasn't Marcus, either. It was Lily. My granddaughter. She stood on the porch, holding a box of pastries and looking about as nervous as a deer caught in headlights. "Hi, Grandpa," she said, voice soft. I blinked. I hadn't seen her in almost a year, not since Christmas, when she stayed quiet while Marcus did most of the talking. She'd grown taller. Her hair was pulled back in a neat braid. But her eyes, Marjorie's eyes, still carried that same quiet kindness. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, stepping aside. "Come on in." She walked in slowly, like she wasn't sure she was welcome. I didn't rush her. I watched her take in the room, the photos, the furniture, the old quilt draped over the back of the couch. "I heard what happened," she said after a moment. "Dad told Mom she ruined everything. Then he left." I nodded, waiting. "I don't know why she let it get that far," she said, setting the pastry box on the table. I kept asking questions and she just shut down. But I knew something wasn't right. She looked at me then, really looked. "You okay?" I smiled. "I am now." She looked relieved. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a notebook. "I'm working on a project," she said. "For school. We're supposed to research someone who inspires us. I want to write about you." My throat caught. "I don't know if I'm much of a role model these days," I said. She shook her head. "You are. You stood up for yourself. You did the right thing even when it hurt." She hesitated. I was wondering if maybe I could come by sometimes. Hear stories. About when Mom was little. About Grandma. I nodded, swallowing hard. "I'd like that," I said. She smiled, and it wasn't forced or polite. It was real. That afternoon, we sat on the porch, eating pastries and laughing. I told her about the time Marjorie burned an entire Thanksgiving turkey and tried to blame it on the oven. About how Emily used to sneak out to feed the neighbor's dog every night because she thought it was lonely. And for the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel empty. It felt alive again. Later that evening, after Lily had gone home, I stood in the kitchen cleaning up. I caught my reflection in the window, a little older, a little grayer, but standing tall. I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt whole. The idea came slowly, like the first warmth of spring after a brutal winter. It started with Lily's visits. She came by every Sunday after church, notebook in hand, questions spilling out like she couldn't write fast enough. Did Grandma really build the garden herself? What was Mom like at my age? What's the most important thing you ever built? That last one gave me pause. I thought about the houses. The fences. The church roof I helped raise in '92. But those weren't the answer. "You," I said quietly. "And your mother." Even when she forgot it, that's still true. Lily looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. The next time she came, she brought a friend, a classmate studying nonprofit management. Smart girl. Big ideas. She talked about community spaces, trade mentoring, outreach programs. And just like that, the spark caught fire. What if my house, my home, could be more than a quiet place to grow old? What if it could become something alive again? I sat with the idea for a week, turning it over like an old coin in my hand. Then I started making calls. First to Walt, my notary friend. Then to George Halberd. Then to Tom at the hardware store, who still had connections with the local trade school. I said, I want to turn my house into something that matters. Not after I'm gone, now. While I can still swing a hammer. George helped draw up the legal framework, a non-profit entity. Walt notarized the transfer of use rights. We kept the house in my name but designated it as the future site of Marjorie's House, a residential training and mentorship program for young adults entering trades. We'd offer room, board, and apprenticeship, 1 year at a time. Just 4 students at a time, to start. Small. Personal. Real. When I told Lily, she nearly burst with excitement. Grandma would love this, she said. She always wanted the house to be full of life. She also wanted it quiet after 9 p.m., I chuckled. We got to work right away. I cleared out the guest rooms, boxing up old linens and furniture. Lily helped paint the front room, and I taught her how to tape off baseboards, the right way, not the fast way, I insisted. A few of the neighborhood kids came by when they heard the commotion. Teenagers mostly, bored and curious. I let them help sand the porch railing. One kid, Miguel, asked 100 questions about woodworking before the sun even set. You good with your hands, I told him. You think with them. He smiled like he'd never heard a compliment like that before. We printed flyers, posted them at the high school and community college. Word started to spread. Donations trickled in, mostly tools, a few small grants, even a batch of new work gloves from the hardware store. Each day, the house felt less like a memory and more like a movement. I found myself waking up early again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Coffee brewing, boots on, sawdust in the air. One morning, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, covered in paint, a pencil tucked behind my ear, and I thought, Marjorie, you'd laugh if you saw me now. But I think she'd be proud, too. The best part? I didn't feel alone anymore. The laughter returned to the walls. The scent of fresh paint, sawed pine, and oven-baked casseroles replaced the staleness that had settled in. The porch swing groaned under new stories. And when I sat in my chair at night, sipping tea, I didn't feel like a man waiting to fade. I felt like a man still building. Still useful. Still home. They started calling me Mr. C. At first, I corrected them. It's George, I'd say. No need for all that formality. But they kept at it. Morning, Mr. C. Mr. C, can I borrow your wrench? Mr. C, I think I messed up the plumbing again. It grew on me. There were 4 of them in that first group, Miguel, who could take apart a carburetor blindfolded, Jesse, a quiet kid who loved electrical work, Tanya, the sharpest welder I've seen in years, and Ray, who reminded me so much of Emily at that age it nearly broke me. They moved into the house 2 months after we launched. I converted the upstairs bedrooms into small dorms. Gave them each a tool chest. Laid out a chore chart just like I used to do with Emily when she was young. At first, they were polite. Careful. Unsure of the rules. But little by little, something beautiful happened. The house stopped being just mine. It became ours. Mornings were loud, coffee brewing, boots thumping, jokes flying across the hall. We ate breakfast together at the long table I'd refinished with Lily's help. Every evening, we shared stories from the day. What went wrong? What we learned? Who got zapped by the breaker, again? There was no entitlement. No schemes. Just young people who wanted to work. Who respected the craft. Who respected me. And that that meant more than I can put into words. One afternoon, I stood in the garage teaching Tanya how to weld a corner joint. She held the torch like a pro, steady and calm. "Nice work," I said. She looked up, face lit with pride. "You really think so?" I nodded. "You've got it in you." She smiled, not a shy smile. A full, confident grin. That kind of smile changes a person. Later that day, Ray brought me a plate of cookies she'd baked in the old oven. Chocolate chip, just like Marjorie used to make. "I didn't have brown sugar," she said, "so I used honey." They were perfect. We laughed more in that house than I'd laughed in years. Not loud, wild laughter, the kind that sneaks up on you. The kind that feels like healing. They helped repaint the porch. Rewired the tool shed. Even cleaned the gutters without being asked. One evening, I found Miguel sitting out front, staring at the stars. "Everything okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah. Just thinking." "About what?" He hesitated. "I never had a place that felt like this before. Not just the roof. I mean, the way it feels. Like it matters that I'm here." That hit me harder than I expected. "You matter, son," I said. "More than you know." He didn't say anything. Just nodded again. That night, I sat on the porch long after the others had gone to bed. The moon was bright. The air smelled like sawdust and blooming lavender. I looked around at the house, the newly painted trim, the porch swing still rocking gently, the light in the upstairs window where someone was reading. And I realized something. This was my real family now. Not by blood. But by choice. By effort. By love. Emily hadn't come by. Not once since that day at the door. I heard from Lily that she was still living in the rental house, working part-time. She asked about me sometimes, but she didn't reach out. And I didn't chase her. Forgiveness, I'd learned, is like a wound. It heals when it's ready, not when we demand it. And in the meantime, life goes on. The new family we'd built under this roof didn't ask me to forget the past. They just gave me something better to focus on. One morning, Lily came by with a stack of papers. "What's this?" I asked. She grinned. "Applications. For the next group. Words getting out." I flipped through the stack, names, stories, letters from kids who wanted to learn, who wanted a place like Marjorie's house. I felt Marjorie with me in that moment. Not just in memory, in spirit. As if she was standing beside me, hand on my shoulder, saying, "You did good, George." I looked at Lily. "You ready to help me run this thing?" She lit up. "You serious?" "I'm too old to do this forever," I said. "But you've got the heart for it." She threw her arms around me and hugged me tight. "Thank you, Grandpa." "No. Thank you, Lily. For helping me remember what it means to live. To build. To give. Blood may bind us, but it's love, honest, earned love, that makes us family." It was late autumn when she came. The leaves had started falling, scattering across the porch in soft reds and tired yellows. The house smelled of fresh cedar. Miguel had just helped me build new shelving in the laundry room, and the living room buzzed with quiet chatter as Ray and Jesse sorted donations from the church. Then there was a knock. I opened the door expecting Lily. But it was Emily. She stood with her arms crossed, wrapped in a coat I didn't recognize. Her eyes were tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind that sits in your bones. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she said finally. I wanted to see you." I didn't move. I didn't invite her in. But I didn't close the door either. I heard about what you're doing with the house, she said, her voice shaking just a little. Lily told me. She paused. It's beautiful, Dad. Really? I nodded once. It's good work. She looked down at her shoes. I've been in therapy, she said quietly. Trying to understand why I let it happen. Why I didn't stop it. Her voice cracked. I was scared, she said. Marcus made everything sound so logical. Like we were helping you. Like you didn't need all that money anyway. She looked up, eyes glassy. But it wasn't about money. It was about control. And I let him take it. From both of us. A breeze passed between us. The porch creaked under our weight. I can't undo what I did, she whispered. But I wanted to say it. Out loud. I'm sorry, Dad. There it was. Not a plea. Not a negotiation. Just 3 words. Simple. Honest. I studied her face. I saw the girl she used to be, the one who danced barefoot in the hallway, who begged for one more story before bed. And I saw the woman she had become, weathered, humbled. I wanted to reach out. To hug her. To bring her inside and pretend like it never happened. But that wouldn't be honest. Not to her. Not to me. So I said, quietly, I appreciate you saying that. She nodded, biting her lip. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better. I stepped onto the porch with her, closed the door gently behind me. We stood side by side, watching the wind carry leaves down the street. You were always a good kid, I said. Smart. Kind. I don't know where things went sideways. But I hope you find your way back. She sniffed, wiped a tear with her sleeve. I'm trying, she said again. I turned to her. This place, it's not about punishment. It's about building something lasting. Something real. You were part of what built this place, once. And you were part of what nearly destroyed it. She closed her eyes like the word stung, but she didn't argue. I don't hate you, Emily, I said softly. But I don't have space for anything that threatens the peace I found here. Her eyes filled again, but she nodded. I understand. She stepped off the porch, paused at the bottom of the steps. Lily had told me she was doing okay now, working, attending a support group. Trying to build a smaller, simpler life. Maybe that was enough. Before she turned to go, she said, I named my cat Marjorie. That stopped me. She's grumpy and protective and hisses at everyone, she added with a shaky laugh. But she always curls up next to me when I'm sad. I smiled, just a little. She'd like that, I said. Then she walked away. No dramatic goodbyes. No long looks. Just the crunch of gravel beneath her shoes as she disappeared down the sidewalk. I went back inside and closed the door. Ray looked up from the couch. Everything okay, Mr. C? I nodded. Just a ghost passing through. She smiled, then handed me a folder. We got another application. Kid from out of state. Wants to learn HVAC. I took the folder, sat down at the table, and read through it. Outside, the wind carried the last of the leaves away. Inside, the house stayed warm. Alive. And mine. Speech balloon, have you ever had to walk away from someone you love? Share your story in the comments. We held the ribbon cutting on a Saturday morning. The autumn sun warmed the porch just enough to keep the chill away, and the garden Marjorie planted all those years ago, long since expanded by Lily and the kids, bloomed with mums and wild asters. A crowd had gathered, neighbors, local reporters, city officials, and families of the young apprentices now calling this place home. A large wooden sign hung proudly above the entrance. Marjorie's house, trade, teach, transform. I stood by it, hands in my pockets, heart pounding like I was a young man again. George Halberd, in his best suit, gave the opening remarks. He talked about legacy. About the value of passing on real skills. About dignity in work. Then Lily stepped forward. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair pinned back like Marjorie used to do. She held her speech in shaking hands but spoke steady. My grandfather didn't build this place to be a monument. He built it to be a bridge. Between generations. Between hope and hardship. Between the life he lived, and the lives he wanted others to have. She looked at me then. And he named it after the woman who gave him his heart. There wasn't a dry eye in the yard. Miguel cut the ribbon with an oversized pair of ceremonial scissors. Everyone clapped. I smiled, wide and honest. We gave tours afterward. People marveled at the workshop out back, the student rooms upstairs, the fully outfitted kitchen. In the living room, a photo wall showed snapshots of the project, me teaching Tanya to weld, Jessie wiring the breaker box, Ray planting new herbs out front, Lily laughing with paint in her hair. There was even an old photo of Marjorie in the garden, one I thought I'd lost years ago, framed and placed at the very center. People lingered long after the event ended. They asked questions. Offered support. Dropped off donations. Some just sat and breathed it in, the feeling of a house filled with purpose, not politics. With warmth, not resentment. As the crowd thinned, I sat on the porch with Lily. You did good, Grandpa, she said, resting her head on my shoulder. So did you, I replied. You made this real. She smiled. What would Grandma think? I looked out at the yard, the porch railing we rebuilt, the swing now occupied by two of our new apprentices chatting about wiring codes. She'd say it's about time someone used this place for more than arguing over money. Lily laughed. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out something small, a brass key on a leather loop. What's this? She asked. The house, I said. Not just the non-profit. The whole place. Deeds in the safe. George helped me update everything. Her eyes widened. But I'm not leaving tomorrow, I said quickly. I've still got some years in me. And plenty of tools to break in. But when I do go, it's yours. She stared at the key like it weighed 100 pounds. Are you sure? I nodded. You're the one who brought this house back to life. Not Marcus. Not Emily. You. You made me believe again. She didn't say anything. Just leaned into me and held the key close. As the sun began to dip, the apprentices gathered in the yard. Miguel started a small bonfire in the pit we'd built together the week before. Tanya played music from a little speaker. Jessie roasted marshmallows with a wire coat hanger. Ray danced barefoot in the grass. I watched them, this group of strangers who had become my chosen family. Who showed up not out of obligation, but because they wanted to be here. Because they saw value in things people had written off. Like this house. Like me. Later that night, after the last marshmallow had been burned and the fire was dying down, I walked through the house one last time before bed. I touched the walls. The banister. The kitchen counter where Marjorie once rolled out dough by hand. I stood in the doorway to the living room and looked at the photo wall, my eyes landing on one picture in particular, the last one taken of Marjorie and me before she passed. We were sitting on this same porch. Her hand on mine. I spoke to her then, like I always did when the house was still. We did it, Marge, I whispered. They tried to take it all, but they couldn't. Not the love. Not the work. Not the roots. I smiled. They thought I'd roll over. That I'd fade quietly. But you and I, we built something stronger than that. I turned out the lights and walked up the stairs. In the hall, laughter echoed from the back rooms. Life. It had come back. And this time, I knew it would stay.